T-minus 20 seconds and counting.
Police are firing tear gas.
We have ignition sequence start.
Yeah, it means we're about to get out here in the street.
12, 11, 10.
We want to choose our president because we want to take this country into the future.
It is a new world record!
Liftoff.
Hey, this is Bryn from Ride, and welcome back to The Big Picture. This episode starts on the streets of Washington, D.C. during Trump's inaugural weekend, where hundreds of thousands of men and women are standing together and marching in solidarity to remind the world that women's rights are human rights.
I think that, for me personally, what has gone on in society recently has kind of been a wake-up call. Feminism obviously is always evolving. And I think that especially we're seeing with this march and we're seeing with the conversation that we're looking at what is broadly used as the term intersectionality.
For me, intersectional practice simply means looking to the margins, putting marginalized women at the center of our policy analysis, at the center of our concern, and then see, what is the policy that flows from that. I'll just give you a quick example. My board has long been concerned about the school-to-prison pipeline, mass incarceration. But when you put a gender lens on mass incarceration, particularly for younger people, so the school-to-prison pipeline, what you see is that there is a sex abuse-to-prison pipeline for girls of color and LGBTQ youth.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah! This little light of mine.
Yesterday was about solidarity. It was cross-generational. That whole intersectionality, that's a new word. Intersection just came about in the last, 5 years? Which is how we've all been living. One of the gifts of this administration, this new administration, it is showing us what the work is. You can't get to work what you can't see or what you don't acknowledge, right? And so the GOP until recently have tried to at least be, undercover. The covers are off, the sheets are off. If we don't see it, if we don't acknowledge it, we can't dismantle it.
My mission going forward really is going to be to have conversations with the white people, particularly the white women. They need to own their responsibility for putting Nazis in the White House, for putting white nationalists in the White House, for creating an environment in which they are the last ones who will be physically endangered. It is our immigrant sisters and brothers and their children who are on the front line. As a feminist activist, you really can't separate your advocacy for women's equality from your advocacy for racial justice. And you equally can't separate it from your advocacy for full civil and human rights for LGBTQ.
They don't want to see Muslim women on a stage carrying on. They don't want to see Latino women carrying on. They don't want to see a black woman. And they don't want to see Bob, a white woman, nursing her baby right next to them, going, "These are my girls." We have to understand we're living in a post-genocidal country. We're living in a post-slavery country. What happened yesterday, given that history, is incredible. If this generation is really about dismantling patriarchy, dismantling white supremacy, you have to acknowledge that it is there. This is what it looks like. We have to tell the truth. So if you're waiting to see leadership that looked like yesterday, then be it.
From Washington, D.C., we take you to Belfast, Ireland, where the controversial peace wall continues to divide Protestant and Catholic communities.
Welcome to Belfast, guys. Guys, this is the Peace Wall here, and this is the street where I live. And you can see the extent of this thing. As I said, bigger than the Berlin Wall, and that's nothing to be proud of. Obviously, the Berlin Wall was two walls with the gun towers and all the military paraphernalia in between. We don't have that. But it is like a scar running through this part of our city. And guys, when I said I live right on the Peace Wall, I told you no lies. This is my home. And you can see the shutters that we had installed, called plantation shutters. And we close the shutters at the bottom windows there at night time and tilt the top ones so as I don't have to look at the wall when I'm having a glass of wine. If you're really, really close to the wall, the back of your home, a physical barrier, a cage has to be put over. And that's because people were being injured when stones, lumps of metal, other missiles were being thrown over, and people out in their backyards were being injured. As you can see, one of my neighbours flies the Palestinian flag from their window 24/7. And that's another political difference in the two communities here. Almost to a person in West Belfast and in the Irish nationalist community, especially in the Irish Republican community, there will be strong support for the Palestinian side in the Middle East conflict. And almost to a person in the loyalist community, they would support the Israeli stance. Guys, this is probably the most famous mural anywhere in Ireland, and it's the mural of Bobby Sands. Bobby Sands was the first of the IRA prisoners to die on hunger strike in 1981. And I was 15 years of age during the hunger strike, and it was my first big delve into political activism. This is a local garden of remembrance in this area, and these gardens of remembrance are dotted all over West Belfast and North Belfast. The monument is broke up into two distinct groups. On the left hand side of the monument are the people on that white canvas in the background, and they would be Irish Republicans way back as far as the War of Independence in the early 1900s from this Clonard area who died, and up through the modern day provisional IRA. But on the right hand side of the monument are civilians from this community who died at the hands of state forces, British state forces, the British Army, the RUC and loyalist paramilitary groups. And by far the bigger fatality rate are civilians. As in any conflict around the world, civilians always bear the greatest death toll. If you take down the peace walls, you're opening up 34 kilometres of new interface area. Again, guys, it's a physical barrier. until we change the barriers that are in our heads, the physical barrier will remain. And for me, the key to it, and it took a long time for me to work this one out, is integrated education. And people on both sides are as bad. The vast majority of children in this area, they go to Catholic maintained schools. The vast majority of kids in the Unionist community go to state maintained schools, which are all Protestant schools. And the churches, both churches on either side, are as bad as one another. And for me, because of dwindling numbers, its influence, they get the kids when they're young, make the church relevant to them, get them its income and influence and everything else. And no matter what happens, they don't see the bigger picture. We have to change those numbers. Send the kids to integrated education, let them make friends, learn together, play together, and make friendships. Some of the guys that I was at school with in primary school are still friends of mine today. And we argue over sport and allegiances that way. That's what we need to do. But until that happens, guys, the people who talk about the peace walls coming down are usually middle class people and affluent people who are sort of embarrassed that we still have that physical barrier in the city of Belfast. A survey was done in 2011 along with residents on both sides of the peace wall, and 69% of the people said that they would not feel safe and were against the walls coming down. There is a provisional date of 2023 for the peace walls to come down. That's okay, setting a date like that. But what's going to change in education? Are we going to get those numbers reversed or changed round that more people send their kids to integrated education by 2023 to try and facilitate that? I don't think so. So I don't think the walls are coming down anytime soon. Other places around the world, people are talking about putting up barriers. Think very, very long and hard about putting that barrier up, because it's not so easy for it to come down again.